Hello, everyone, on this very rainy day in the south of England, or slightly north than the south of England, or even in the north of England, depending on where you are. And welcome to episode number 8 of the Tune In Podcast with Sarah and Harry, where this week we're actually switching it up a little bit from what we normally do with regards to themes. So normally we have, song titles with X thing or Y thing in its name. But this week, Sarah decided that we should go down a different route from normal.
Yeah, so I really like film music in all shapes and sizes and forms it comes in. So I thought, why not just do a whole sort of film special episode? So songs or scores that have featured in film.
So it could be a passing film feature, or it could be an actual part of the soundtrack. So one of the two. Certainly from the stipulations I got from it, at least. You'll find out why with one of my entries a bit later on. But we also have a question submitted by one of my good friends, so thank you very, very much for that. And also, as per usual, the songs that we've been listening to over the last week. Now, again, this is a special film episode, but somewhere down the line we will do the special episode of my realm of interest of soundtracks, so video game soundtracks to songs. But for now, we're going to go with film music.
So Harry, would you like to start us off with your list?
Yeah. So my first song was one of the ones. As soon as Sarah told me what the theme was, I was pretty certain as to which one I would pick as my number one. And it's Our Town by James Taylor. This features in the movie Cars from 2006, which is one of my childhood favourite films. And it's me picking the Disney Pixar song this week as opposed to Sarah, so we're switching it up a little bit. And so it plays during Sally, one of the lead characters, reminiscing on the town's history and overview of the whole city to Lightning McQueen, who is obviously the main character of the whole film, and it documents how Radiator Springs, the village, used to thrive before a rot set in, resulting in little to no visitors anymore. And for me, it's just so poignant and emotional to listen to, just on its own, never mind in the context of the film. And I also believe won the the Oscar for Best Original Song in 2006 or 2007, one of the two. Also, it really holds a special place to me for one very good reason, and that is there is a photo in my room of me and my brother aged about 8 or 9ish, and it's probably my favourite photo of all time, where we're just lying on a sofa, and I believe it's whilst watching Cars with this scene on in the background. So it obviously holds a special place to me as a result of that, and so that's why it gets my number one spot.
Interestingly, Cars isn't one of the ones that I've seen a lot. I think I've seen it maybe once
Blasphemy.
or twice. Or no, I think a lot of things you haven't seen Disney-wise is blasphemous. More so than, the classic Disneys. This is just Disney Pixar. I'm like, no. It's alright. I imagine it fit in quite well into that sort of classic Disney, sad scene kind of thing. If you think, is it Toy Story 2? That when Jesse's
When Somebody Loved Me?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
that one.
It reminds me, not in the same way of obviously they're very different songs, but it reminds me of that sort of moment in the film when you find out why they're so sad or why they act the way they do. It's a little the song is in general it's a little bit cliche in terms of it sounds like a Disney Pixar song, but it has nice chords in it. Some of the chords are a little different.
Yeah, especially in the post-chorus section when it goes from, 1 to 1/7 to 4 and then 4 minor, and you're like, oh, okay. But it's more just I wouldn't say nostalgia value to it, but definitely the emotional value more than anything that makes it so special to me in particular.
Yeah. Quick question for you then, because I don't remember the music from this film particularly well. I just wondered how it compared to music from the rest of the film in terms of sound, or even artists, they picked similar artists
Okay, so there are a few, like, obviously the orchestral songs, like, you know, when there's a race going on, or Lightning is, you know, finding his way around the city or whatever. But then, for contrast, you have the Rascal Flatts cover of Life is a Highway, which I was so close to picking. I was so close, but I limited myself to one per film. And also Real Gone by Sheryl Crow at the start, which just fits so well with the opening scene of, you know, just racing around at high-paced speed with some blaring country rock music playing in the background. And then this song is obviously, you know, the standard Disney emotional section in the film, because there's always a standard Disney emotional section in the film at some point. And this time I know I'm right, as opposed to last week when I said that every single Disney thing has a dance interlude in the middle. This time I know I'm right. But in terms of the overall vibe of Our Town, it doesn't like work with the rest of the soundtrack as a whole, but it works absolutely brilliantly with that moment and that moment alone. Like, if you put it anywhere else, it just would. If you put it anywhere else, even when Lightning McQueen just enters Radiator Springs, it just wouldn't work. But when it's the kind of plaintive look back on the history of the town, and you have the, you know, somber music in the background, that just makes it all the better. And also, I think the lyrics now, they do seem a little bit personal. You know, long ago, but not so very long ago, the world was different. Like, you can link that to nowadays with obviously the situation surrounding COVID. I wouldn't say it's taken on an extra symbolic nature for me as a result of that, because it always did have one in the first place, but one could make a good case to link it into that. So Our Town was a shoo-in for me, and my second shoo-in, again, this jumps straight to my head. I've been trying to feature this song for weeks and weeks, not because of the song itself, I will admit, but because of the film which it is from, which is my favourite film of all time. And it is Ludovico Einaudi's Una Mattina from the film Intouchable, which was released in 2011. Okay, I know it's an Einaudi song. I know it's basic and just, you know, standard tropey Einaudi. There's nothing else to it. But it's more to do with how it is used in the film, which makes it all the better for me. So, there's Intouchable, in case you don't know. It's the story of a quadriplegic man who is very wealthy and in need of a new carer. And despite this black man from the suburbs only coming in to his place to claim some benefits, he actually gets the gig as a carer, and he introduces Philip, who's the quadriplegic, to his lifestyle, his music, including Earth, Wind and Fire, and also his drugs. And when Driss departs, Philip realises he can't cope without him, so he rehires him. And Una Mattina plays throughout. It's one of the pieces which, again, features quite a lot. But perhaps most significantly at the end, when Philippe finally meets the date with whom he had an epistolary relationship, which Driss actually sets up. And we also find out what happened to the actual people about whom the film is based. So when you put it obviously on its own, it's just your standard Einaudi stuff. But when you put it into the context of the film, I think it gains another emotional layer to it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the film, and I've heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was about while listening to it, only from obviously your description. To me, it sounds really nice. It sounds like sort of typical Einaudi with like simple chords, melodies, but used. This isn't a criticism. They're used very effectively, and I do imagine it fitting well in a very emotional film.
Yeah, so like when you when it goes to the harmonic shift to the F major chord.
Yeah.
That's the moment they time it in the film with the moment that Philippe meets the date in question.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine that kind of, you know, euphoria tying in with that moment. And I think that's why they've used it so effectively in that particular segment of the film.
Yeah. Okay, that sort of answered my question. You said the piece was used specific, like at the end, but also throughout. My question was, how does it add to the atmosphere of what's happening on screen at any of those specific moments? I guess you picked up one of those specific moments where it does enhance that, but do you have any more like general points?
As far as I can recall, because I haven't seen the film admittedly in a couple of years or so, but it does feature at a time when Philippe is also, I think he's been abandoned by Driss as well as by a couple of other people. So it also carries, yet again, another kind of powerful symbolism of emotion at that moment. But to me, it's clever how it's used in a negative context of loneliness as well as a positive context of meeting this person finally. But so I guess it's good to have that contrast, but it's just that particular like scene which it kind of made everything fall into place, which it had been building up to for so long, and the music there works brilliantly. Again, I'm not going to claim to be a film music buff like Sarah is. I'm not.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I just enjoy it, but
yeah, but like no, but you know a lot more about film music than I do. Like you know like how it works and stuff, and I'm not that kind of film music analytic, but I can understand where it works well, where this song works well, because of again the emotional symbolism attached to it in that particular moment. So yeah, my third song is yet again we're staying in France for this film, and it is a song from the fantastic 2004 film Les Choristes, but it's not Vois sur ton chemin as might be expected, because as much as I do like that song, I love the kind of interplay between the two sections of the choir, I prefer the one that I've picked, which is Gare sur l'Océan. When I took it out of context of the film, it still sounded great, and then when I watched the film itself, it made it even better. So for those who don't know, Les Choristes is basically, it's set in 1949 in a boys' boarding school run by a tyrant headmaster who basically punishes the boys for each slight misdemeanour. But with the arrival of a choir master, there's a choir that's formed and the boys' discipline improved. And there's a solo in the middle of the song by a character in the film called Pierre Morange, who originally refuses to take part until the choir master realises his vocal potential and tells him to be the principal voice in the choir. And as a result of that, he's the person who sings the second verse all on his own, with the choir backing him up with beautiful harmonies behind him. But I think why I've picked this song is because of its harmonic shifts in the chorus. I find them to be absolutely gorgeous, and just the general feel of the song, it's quite uplifting. I just found it to be a standout from the soundtrack, which already has some brilliant songs on it. No wonder it got nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, this film, in a slightly different way, has some memories for me. I watched it in, I think it was year 8, French maybe. We sung Vois sur ton chemin as a class and in a music competition as well. So I remembered that song a lot more. And I think that's probably the more memorable and most famous song from the film. However, I think, again, I do agree with you, this song is, I don't want to say it's better, but in terms of, it's just quite different in terms of like harmonies, and they're the more standout feature, and I think I prefer that. I mean, in terms of sing along to, I prefer Vois sur ton chemin, but
yeah, Vois sur ton chemin is definitely the one which you'd sing along to the most. But Gare sur l'Océan, I think, has more. It's more uplifting, and it feels a little bit like Walking in the Air from The Snowman. I don't know if you felt that, but I got a lot of similarities to that, especially in the chorus.
Yeah, I suppose some of the chords used and harmonies, and then the solo, I can't think of the name, but like the high, young
the countertenor.
Thank you. Yeah. The question, because like a lot of people, obviously you can speak French. I speak very little French. I don't know how much French other people speak. What is the message of the song?
See, from what I gather from it, it's it's the Porte l'oiseau si léger, which is like, carry the bird so light. And it's kind of like, I think it's kind of this floaty feeling of escapism. Because bear in mind, the boys at this point, they've all been, subjected to massive punishments from the headmaster if they make so much as a very slight indiscretion. And I think it's meant to be a song which is, uplifting. It's meant to give them almost a free spirit to fly away, to escape this hell almost. And I think it is that kind of, the liberation kind of thing of flying away to this distant place or finding something beyond the confinements of this school. I think that's possibly the message that I got from it personally. That's not to say again that I'm right. That's just to say that Well, that's what I thought of it. And of course, you guys can think of the song however you want to, with all of them being put onto the Spotify playlist, as we do every week. Shameless plug, because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, obviously of all the songs that we discuss during this episode will be put onto a playlist, which you can either find by clicking the link on our Facebook page or in the description of our YouTube video, or just going onto our profile, which for some reason even I can't find. But it's fine. So that'll be there for you guys to listen to, and you guys can form your own opinions on this song as well. Although, if you don't think it's beautiful or in any way like wonderful to listen to, then you clearly have something wrong in your head. Yeah, I said it.
I'd like to. Well, I'd like to. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I'd like to hear your reasoning as to why. Maybe we could have a polite, calm debate about it instead of attacking the listeners, Harry.
We'll save that. We'll save that for another day.
Okay.
Now, my fourth song is easily my most tenuous link to this theme in the entirety of my list, because it only features for 30 seconds in the film The Hate You Give, but it does feature for 30 seconds at some point during a film. And I've been trying to fit a Kendrick Lamar song into one of my themes for the entirety of the podcast, and I finally managed to do so with the song DNA. Again, as I say, it's very tenuous, but I wanted to pick it somewhere, and I've decided to do so for this week. So it's mostly to do with the song as opposed to the film, because I haven't actually seen the film as to why I like it. But the Kendrick's flow, in my opinion, is impeccable throughout, and the bars discuss his heritage and upbringing. And it also uses a clip from Geraldo Rivera's diatribe at Kendrick on Fox News after he performed his song All Right at the BET Awards, I think, as he states that his lyrics, which are meant to symbolise positivity in the face of adversity, are dangerous, and that hip-hop has been more damaging to young African Americans than racism in recent years. That's a quote from him, that's not a quote from me. Give me strength.
Yeah.
Also, interestingly, Lamar actually rapped the second verse a cappella and told Mike Will Made It, who was the song's producer, to produce this kind of chaotic beat around it. So Mike Will decided to make it seem as though Lamar was actually battling the beat, hence why it's a bit more distorted and free, but also very dark at the same time. So I love the song as a whole. It's a bit less to do with the film in context, as I say, because I haven't seen the film, truth be told. But it's just an amazing song, so I had to pick it.
Yeah, I also haven't seen the film, but I have heard really good things about it, and I've been meaning to watch it for a while now, actually. But the only thing I do know is I've listened to the score, because it's composed by composer and I think pianist Dustin O'Halloran, and he is really good, in my opinion. So yeah, I do love the score to this film. But in terms of this song, it's pretty good. I don't love it. I don't.
Wow, I got Sarah to like a rap song.
It's pretty good. The only thing that I didn't really like is the fact that it just feels his flow is really good, and you know everything that you said is also correct. However, up until the sample that was used, it sort of all felt like it was on one level and didn't really progress up until that point. It just sort of felt one level, and then that happened, but then for me that sort of really cemented the song's meaning and purpose and sort of what the song was about. And I think from that point onwards, I really enjoyed it. And I did enjoy it at the beginning, but it just sort of didn't really go anywhere until it got to that point.
Yeah, it doesn't really, the beat doesn't really, progress all that much for the start, or for the first, 1.5 minutes or so. But I also, and again, I love songs with progression, but I also think that's kind of the point. I think the focus is mostly on what Kendrick has to say. Whilst I do think the beat is very catchy, as you say, it doesn't go anywhere, but then you switch to the second half where it's very, very aggressive.
Yeah.
And whenever I listen to it, I always feel like I'm entering this kind of really weird zone of, wait, oh my god, I feel like I'm being attacked, but in a really positive way. It's so aggressive, but it's aggression in the right way. It's channeled correctly.
I mean, I do completely understand what you're saying and how the focus isn't really on the beat. It's more on what he's saying and the message he's getting across. However, I do feel like I sort of got a bit bored. I was listening to the message and I was like, this is important, but if you've got an important message to say, it needs to be engaging, otherwise people were going to tune out. I feel like obviously the beat could have stayed in the background, but it could have still built to that sample moment and then just had a bit of a better song progression overall. But individually, it is really good.
Yeah, I think you are right, but there is like that the feeling in me that just thinks that's kind of meant to be like that, and then and then with the sample kicking in, where it's kind of an ironic sample, but also like, you know, it's a critiquing sample. As a result of that, you get the switch up, you get the change, and it just feels, again, very in your face, and very like, if you didn't get my message the first time, here it is directly at you right now, and you are not avoiding it.
No, I totally get that. It is on the official soundtrack. But I mean, obviously you haven't seen it, but I just wondered if you knew sort of what bit in the film it was in, and whether you think it would fit that bit.
It's at the start. I did actually see the scene where it does feature. It's just after the name of the film has been revealed, like in the actual opening title sequence. Like the song starts playing whilst it says "The Hate You Give" on screen, and then it's basically just a few shots of various different parts of the main character, presumably the main character's room, and then it cuts to a scene where I believe it's like she's getting ready to go out for the day or something like that. But I think it's just there for kind of like, you know, a backdrop. I might be very, very wrong because I don't know the overall context of the film, but it does seem to me as though it's there for a backdrop. But yeah, a song that isn't there for a backdrop is my final one, and it is one which definitely is a part of the soundtrack to a film, and it's Fats Waller's "Ain't Misbehavin'" from the film Stormy Weather, released in 1943. So this film Stormy Weather is one of the first musicals with a full African American cast that actually made it, like, you know, globally, because Hollywood wants to show off all the amazing African American actors and actresses that they had at their disposal, and Fats Waller is undeniably one of them. And he provides he makes an appearance with this, playing this song with his traditional, like, humor, his stage presence, and massive eyebrows. Unfortunately, it was one of his last roles, as he sadly passed away at the age of just 38 later that year. It was actually written in 1929, though, for the musical Connie's Hot Chocolates, whilst Waller was lodging in prison, but lyrics were added to it by Andy Razaf, who worked closely with Waller throughout his life. I love its usage in the film because I think it works actually really well, as well as Waller, who was known to be as much of a comedian as he was a very talented pianist and singer. So it combines those two fantastically, albeit, again, regrettably, I haven't seen the whole of the film.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting, not completely unexpected choice, obviously, because it's jazz, but when I saw the film and then looked up when the film was made, that was surprising to me, and then I saw that it was jazz and was like, oh, okay, this isn't surprising anymore. Surprisingly, I feel like it's really popular, because even my mum knew it, and she's not a massive jazz fan, but she really liked it as well. But I'd never heard it, but I don't know quite how to feel about it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. It is obviously jazz, and it is very sort of jazzy jazz, like typical jazz, but then it's also really not. Like, it's really hard to explain. It's very chilled out, and then the solos sort of take off, and then it chills back out again. I really don't know what to make of it.
It's not. I wouldn't call it like bona fide jazz. I think it's Waller's style, but his own twist on jazz as a whole. It's not like, obviously, I mean, it is a song which he can express himself when he could have expressed himself when performing it live, as he does in the film. But it maybe doesn't fall into his standard category of, you know, really either spoken word sections, which are meant to be quite humorous, as he does in songs like Your Feet's Too Big. But this is meant to be, I guess, a more melodic side to him, as well as exploiting his very, very obvious piano talents. Yes. I mean, he plays most of it in the film without looking at the keys, which is very impressive.
Yeah, when I watched the clip just before we started recording, and obviously attention was on his eyebrows, but that's sort of besides the point. He was looking at the camera most of the time, but still playing the piano. The camera was like off to the side, and
he was looking at the people.
Looking at the people, but in terms of the film, it would have been the camera.
Yes.
Or in the camera direction. But then he was playing, but he never looked at the piano, not once. And that really shocked me. I mean, obviously he's highly talented.
Oh yeah, undeniably he's absolutely talented. But when you get the visual side, that's where Waller's character can come in more than it does in the music, because again, as I say, it's the humour mixed with the music. Whereas when you hear it like without the context of the film, it's still a brilliant song in itself, but it's not one that you might put straight into stereotypical Fats Waller. Yeah,
I mean, is there a song of his that you think is stereotypical him that you can sort of suggest?
Well, again, the one I said earlier, Your Feet's Too Big, which which is absolute. Again, it's just like, how have you written a song like this? But thank God that there is a song written like this, because I was laughing the whole way through. And again, it does also show off his talents of, light piano playing, but also very proficient piano playing as well. So I think that's probably the one which I grew up on the most of Fats Waller, alongside Ain't Misbehavin'. But that would be the one I think I would recommend people to start out with if they haven't heard any Fats Waller before. Although, obviously, that's a very, very, select song, and people might think, oh, actually, it might be X song or Y song. But in my opinion, Your Feet's Too Big and Ain't Misbehavin' are two of his best, if not his best. So that is my film list, film music list. And now we move to the experts. What have you got for us?
I mean, I wouldn't say expert, especially from my picks. I really did struggle. I had a list of about 25 songs in pieces and had to narrow it down by a fifth of what I had. So I've tried to pick films that are probably some of my favourite films but also have good music, and that's being sort of the main reason why I enjoyed the film, if that makes sense. So I also have not mentioned any Disney or any Studio Ghibli, because I feel like I've mentioned them to death, but those have incredible music in them and I fully recommend those. But to start off with, I've picked probably, I don't know if it is my favourite film, but it's very much up there. And it's a film called A Knight's Tale. The song that I've picked is unfortunately not We Will Rock You, which is the classic song in that film, obviously by Queen. But I've picked Low Rider by a band called War, which I thought I hadn't heard. And then I re-listened to it out of context of the film and was like, oh, this is actually a song that I do know. A little bit of background on the film, just in case you haven't seen it. It was a 2001 film starring Heath Ledger, Mark Addy and Shannon Sossamon. I'm very sorry if I said that wrong. About a peasant called William, who's played by Heath Ledger, who pretends to be a knight and competes in jousting tournaments, trying to impress this lady, and trying to just get some money as well. It's very, very funny, and it's worth a watch. It's so funny. But this particular scene is after he's done has he done his first jousting tournament? I can't remember exactly. I haven't seen the film for a very long time. But he's basically training to joust, and he starts off so badly, and then as the song progresses, he gets better and better until he's sort of nailed it, if you like. It's a very, very funny scene with a lot of physical comedy in it, as well as some witty comments from his two friends. But the song itself is a funk song. It's actually released in 1975, and it has really low vocals, which I sort of didn't expect when I first listened to the song. But I just think it fits with the scene really well, which is why I like the song and the scene working together, because it sort of adds that more comedic value to the scene and it just makes it more funny.
Yeah, it's definitely a recognisable song. I mean, surprisingly enough, I actually knew all of Sarah's picks barring one, despite being the non-film music expert out of us two. But it's got, it's a very recognisable trumpet riff. I mean, you will have heard it at some points. But I was thinking as I was listening to it, is that the song itself, it doesn't really go anywhere. It kind of just stays the same all the way through. It's very repetitive in its cycles and all that kind of stuff, and vocals and trumpet riff. And I was thinking, maybe does that link into his training? Because it doesn't really progress that much. So do you think maybe that was a reason why they chose this song as part of the soundtrack in that particular moment?
That is a really interesting thought. The song, obviously, like, Low Rider, one of the things I got from it, he's obviously riding a horse. Low Rider. I thought that was a good link, but probably an irrelevant link. But in a way, it allowed the fact that it had sort of limited progression. It still had these sort of like quirky vocals with like the quite recognisable instrumental refrain that kept coming back. Sort of added to the comedy of the scene, but then also the fact that it didn't progress allowed the physical comedy and the comments that were the comedic lines that were said to be heard sort of over. If I had music that was a lot going on and a lot of progression, I don't think it would have had the same impact as something that's just very stagnant. And I guess it does also tie into the fact that he also doesn't progress that much, and it sort of is the sound becomes synonymous with him failing at jousting and getting hit in the face with a sandbag kind of thing. Like,
I am susceptible to a bit of slapstick comedy myself, so I did find the scene very enjoyable.
It's I just love it so much. It's probably, I can't describe why I love it so much. I just do. The whole film itself is also incredible acting as well as just being very funny. The music is a very big part of it in terms of like when they do "We Will Rock You." They have the whole stadium singing along with it, even though it's a historical film, obviously, and it didn't like these songs didn't exist at that time, obviously. But they have the stadium doing like the recognisable like body percussion at the beginning of "We Will Rock You," and like them singing along with it as well, which I think is just hilarious. But yeah, that's why I picked that film, and then specifically that song as well. Moving on though to my next song, I guess, piece. It's from the film Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's such a funny film and also so clever. The music was composed by someone called Joby Talbot, who I haven't actually heard of or haven't seen them do any other films. If they have, let me know and I'll give them a listen. But just a little bit of background to the film itself. It's a 2005 film starring Martin Freeman and Zooey Deschanel.
And Mos Def.
And thank you.
He's a rapper, that's why I had to mention.
Okay. Okay. It also has Stephen Fry in it as well, which is kind of cool. He narrates a lot of it. About a guy called Arthur Dent, who's played by Martin Freeman, and his sort of journey around the galaxy after discovering that an alien race is going to destroy the Earth.
On a Thursday, yeah.
There's a lot more to it than that. It's all kind of complicated, but I think it explained very well in the film and in this scene in the film. So the piece that I picked is actually titled The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and it comes from like this animated sort of database looking scene where they basically explain what the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is, which is a best-selling book ever to exist in the whole universe about facts and how to sort of navigate the galaxy. And there's very like comedic bits in it, and it's directed by Stephen Fry, as I mentioned earlier. But in the film itself, with this piece, it's sort of hard to hear the music over the narration. The music isn't supposed to be the defining feature of that scene. However, the electronic sounds in the beginning up to the sort of climactic point fit the sort of database electronic computery type feel to the animated bit. And there's a bit sort of near the end where it crescendos, sort of building to this moment where it crescendos to like an actual orchestral, real life orchestra sounding bit with some electronic bits over it. And it's revealed that "Don't Panic" is written on the back of the book. And that's the moment when you see the words "Don't Panic," that is the moment of the crescendo, and I just think it fits so well with this particular scene, and I'm sure it would have been a really hard scene to write music for, because there's not really a standard sort of formula to follow or like any sort of atmosphere or action to go off of like the sort of tone of the scene. It's just very factual but also kind of funny, so I guess there's a bit of that. But that's why I really like it and think it's really clever.
Yeah, I've never. I mean, I've seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy before, much to Sarah's surprise. But I've never really considered this particular song before. I mean, obviously, like, you can hear it in certain places when Stephen Fry stops narrating for certain moments. And when you listen to it in isolation, you do get why it's there, because it's got that kind of floaty electronic purpose. But I did think that even with, like, its uses in that scene, do you think there should still be, like, a melody of some sort behind the text? Because when you listen to it again on its own, it does sound like there is a kind of melody going on, as opposed to just being kind of not aimless, but meant to be background music without an actual, like, melody. Do you think it works with that as a result?
I think it does, just because obviously the music is very quiet in that scene, so it allows for the narration to happen and to be heard extremely clearly. But when I think about, like, a computer and the noises it makes and the sort of booting startup sounds and all the sounds that happen, I don't think of, like, stagnant chords, and, like, I think of, like, the weird melodies that happen, and it sort of sounds a bit like a longer extended version of that. I think that's probably why it happened. That's why they probably put that in, rather than just having not really very moving chords. And it also allows them to build up to this climax of the point when it says "Don't panic" on the back as well.
Yeah, I've never really considered that before, to be fair. That's a great observation. But yeah, I guess that does make sense now when you put it back into that kind of thing. Yeah, again, having not seen the film for a long time, again, you kind of forget the background music to it, which again is a faux pas on my part. But when you put it back into it, like, listen to it on its own and then listen to it with the context of the film, it does make sense. It does tie in quite well.
I mean, I don't think it's a faux pas on your point, because it took me ages to find out exactly what scene in the film it was, because I couldn't hear it to start off with. I wanted to put in "So Long and Thanks for All the Fish." I don't know if you've heard it, but if you haven't heard it at home, it's a song sung by dolphins at the beginning of the film, and it's very, very funny. But I wanted to include something that maybe you wouldn't have heard when you watched the film at a first sort of watch, because it's so into the background and works so well that you don't hear it, and it becomes just sort of a nice ambience and fits in so well with the scene. I wanted to include something that isn't supposed to be a standout song or piece on its own. It's something it's sort of just highlighting the importance of music in film, because that scene without any, like, music or even, like, sound effects to it would be really just not right. Just wouldn't be right at all, but you don't necessarily hear the music by itself, if that makes sense. My next piece, however, is meant to be standalone orchestral piece. It's the main titles from the film Belle. Now, not Beauty and the Beast Belle. An actual potentially true story. It's very debated about what actually happened. The music was composed by one of my favourite film composers, Rachel Portman. But if you haven't seen the film, which I'd be surprised if you have, to be honest, it's a 2013 film starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw. I'm so sorry, I definitely said that wrong.
What is it with you and pronunciations over the last few weeks? What is going on?
I'm sorry, would you like to pronounce her name?
Gugu Mbatha-Raw.
Thank you. I can't read ever. I'm so sorry. Yes. Stars her. She's I haven't seen her anything else, but she is an amazing actress. It also stars Miranda Richardson, Sam Reed, and Tom Felton as a really horrible stuck-up man from the 1700s, which he fits so well. Think Draco, but, like, a lot older and, like, a lot posher, if you can. It's about Dido Elizabeth Bell, who is a black woman taken in by a wealthy white family in the 1700s, and the struggles she faces. Even though she's brought up as an equal to her cousin, she still faces a lot of struggles. Like, she can't sit with the family to eat. She has to sit with the servants to eat. The film itself, which I thought was really interesting, I'm a bit of a history nerd, and this really fascinated me, is inspired by a 1779 painting of Dido Elizabeth Bell beside her cousin Lady Elizabeth Murray at Kentwood House, which is where she grew up. And it's a real-life painting, and it's so fascinating to these historians to see a black woman at the same status as her white cousin, and sort of being treated as equals at the time of slavery. And they were just sort of fascinated by the story behind it, which I thought was super, super interesting. Another thing I loved about this film is it's female-led, written, directed and composed, which is a massive step forward, and it's such a good film and it really shows. But in terms of this piece in the film, it's just in the opening credits, and it sort of has the themes that are used throughout the rest of the film, so I think it sums up the film quite nicely. I couldn't pick a specific piece, so I just picked the main titles. It sort of sounds like typical period drama music if you think about like the sort of typical storylines and stuff, and it sums up that quite well, but it also has this sort of underlying darker tone to the music. It's in a minor key and it has like some darker chords, if you like, used, and it sets this darker undertone, and it has, as the film sort of has like an extra layer of it, of like the racism and the slavery at the time. And I think it's really nice that you can tell just from the music what the film is going to be about. So yeah, that's why I really like it.
You've basically said every single one of the notes I had written down. I'm not going to lie.
I'm so sorry. I have a lot to say about this film.
to be, I don't really know what else I can add to that. I mean, I think you've just basically produced an essay.
I could write an essay on this film.
I mean, it's the main titles. It's the only one I hadn't actually heard of beforehand, and I just felt a bit bored by it. I didn't really get into it that much. I was going to ask, like, is this the character of the film that it's trying to portray? But you've already answered it, so I mean, not the board, like in terms of the board, like in terms of like, is it meant to reflect something later in the film? So you have already answered my question, so I don't really feel as though more needs to be said.
I mean, I'm just, in terms of like, I don't know, it's not supposed to reflect specific moments in the film, but the overall sort of, I don't know if you've ever seen a period drama film before. I think like Pride and Prejudice, like Emma, it's very classical based, because it has to be sort of loosely historically accurate, if you like, which is probably why you didn't like it, and that's totally okay. I didn't expect you to like it. I just have a lot to say about this film, as you can probably tell. But it does, so it has that sort of classical period drama feel, which the film also does. They speak sort of very in the way that they do back in those days. However, it also has this the darker sound to it, which does highlight another layer that's added to the film of this racism at the time, which I thought is really clever on Rachel Portman's part. I feel like I've said way too much on that, and I will just move on. So my next song is a bit of a switch up from the last one. Also one of my favourite films, which is kind of a surprise.
Only a minor switch up. Only
still historical, sort of.
I mean,
not historically accurate, not based on any
because
history.
ogres definitely ruled the world, didn't they?
Okay, let me get okay. So this is from, in my opinion, the best Shrek film, Shrek 2. The song that I've picked is Ever Fallen in Love, and this version's by Pete Yorn. It's originally by the Buzzcocks. Just a little disclaimer, the Buzzcocks version will be on the Spotify playlist, because the Pete Yorn version isn't on Spotify. But it's on YouTube, along with the scene in Spanish for some reason. So go and check that out. Because
I wonder why I didn't understand any of it.
Yeah, there's not much talking throughout the rest of the scene, so it doesn't really matter. It's just at the beginning. It is in Spanish, so it's probably a large statement. My favourite scene in any film ever. I don't know why I love it so much, and it probably has a thing to do with the music, which is why I picked this song. If you haven't seen Shrek 2, I don't know what you're doing, but I will have a brief synopsis to the film. It was a 2004 sequel to the first film in 2001 about an ogre called Shrek, who's trying to keep his true love, Princess Fiona, who's voiced by Cameron Diaz, as her parents don't really want him to marry her because obviously he's an ogre, and they want her to instead marry the fairy godmother's son, Prince Charming. So there's a lot going on, and at this point Shrek, Donkey, who's voiced by Eddie Murphy, and Puss in Boots, who's voiced by Antonio Banderas, sneak into the fairy godmother's factory and steal a love potion to try and get Fiona back. And at that point, the guard notices them, and then they have to escape out, and they just cause havoc in the factory, turning everyone into like different animals and running across the conveyor belts and stuff. And it's a really funny scene. The original song is also really good. However, this version has like that more modern feel to it, which I think is needed for the film. But it's just a really fun song, and also I thought that maybe it ties in with the meaning of that scene as well, because maybe he did fall in love with someone he shouldn't have because of the love potion.
It's definitely more modern spin on the original, though both are still quite electronic infused, I think. Like, because again, I haven't seen Shrek 2 in, it must be at least 14, 15 years, so please do excuse me. But I couldn't remember like its purpose in that scene or why it was used in that scene, but so I was gonna like just a bit complex as to why like you think it worked so well, because all I could see was just, you know, an army of soldiers chasing after Shrek, and then all of a sudden he throws something at them and they all transform into different objects, and I was a bit confused as to why that song was needed. Was it to do with the musical qualities? Was it to do with like just external connotations that I didn't know?
I don't know really honestly why they picked it, but I can give you some insights into why I think that they picked it. Obviously to do with the whole love thing. Ever fall in love with someone you shouldn't have, basically, is the meaning of the song. And there's a lot of like underlying message with the love potion, with the use of the love potion, saying that maybe Shrek shouldn't, at that point is a turning point where Shrek's like, maybe I shouldn't be sort of in love with her. And then also Prince Charming's trying to get someone to fall in love, trying to get Fiona to fall in love with him. She shouldn't be in love with him. There's all sorts of things like that within the film that I think is why the song works at that moment. But in terms of the actual scene itself and the action that's happening, it sort of has a bit of a Havoc sound to it. It's not quite like clean rock. It's like it's just sort of a lot of noise and a lot going on, and I think that's why it fits with the Havocus. That's not a word. With the chaotic scene. Thank you. With the chaotic scene that's happening.
Yeah, I did think like it is quite chaotic, and it does add to the kind of, you know, humor, the chaos, the mania, that kind of thing. But when you just get the scene, like from having not seen the film in ages, to just going into that scene and being like, wait, okay, what is going on? Why are we using this?
Yeah,
that's why I was a bit just like, right, I might need some guidance, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess within Shrek, across the board with Shrek films, they tend to use older songs or covers of older songs. Think like I'm Holding Out for a Hero and other things. I can't think of any other examples, but I mean, I'm a Believer as well, which has become pretty synonymous with the film now. Yeah, but I think it sort of ties in with the using older songs in the films. Okay, on to my final piece, and it's from, I think, an underrated film in my opinion, Sherlock Holmes, starring Robert Downey Jr., Jude Law and Rachel McAdams. And it's about just Sherlock Holmes and the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I think there's been a lot of different films and TV shows made about Sherlock Holmes, but this is set in the Victorian era, where it's like meant to be, rather than the Sherlock TV show set, obviously in present day, roughly. So the piece that I've picked is called Discombobulate. This piece features in the end credits, and again incorporates themes from all the other pieces, which basically whenever I do this, it means I can't pick a piece from within the actual film itself, and I pick one that ties in everything and sort of sums it up all quite nicely. I think the music overall, and even the film, has like dark, old Victorian, almost steampunk kind of vibes, which ties perfectly in with the music, with the use of like the instruments that are used are sort of orchestral but slightly quirkier sounding. I can't remember the name of it, but it's got mandolin / harpsichord kind of vibes, like really old dusty, crusty harpsichord, that kind of vibe. And also the chords that are used within the piece sort of reflect this slightly quirky Victorian underground kind of vibe, which the film also reflects pretty well, I think.
Yeah, Sherlock is a great film. I haven't seen the second one, but I have seen the first. So I will have heard this at some stage, probably again about 10 years ago or so when I actually watched the film for the first time. I love the string instruments, the low string instruments.
Yeah.
As much as I hate string instruments as a whole, as a general rule of thumb, I think they work really well in this song. However, my question is that, like, I never really care for end credits because, well, they're the end credits. Unless it's by Chase and Status featuring Plan B, in which case I do care because that song is great.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, like, what makes you care about them, and particularly this piece, and what would you say to, Philistines like me to try and bring them round to listening to, or watching the end credits and soaking in the music?
Okay, well, the first thing, the main reason I stick around for the credits is to see who composed the music for the film. I do that a lot. I do that in the cinema, everyone's left, and I'm like, oh, look, it's Hans Zimmer. Okay, we can go now, I'm happy. I tend to do that a lot. But no, in terms of the music, I think the music in the credits and the main titles, the beginning and the end music, tends to have the most character because it's using the themes from within the film, like all the music within the film, it's using different themes from that, different like standout themes from that, incorporating it all into one piece. So it definitely has the most character, and it also can have the most melodic excitement, if you like, because obviously in the middle of a film you've got to be focused on the film as well, and it's got to blend in quite nicely, and sort of be like it's not there almost. People will just sort of forget it is there, but it really, really does add. So especially in the end credits, but also the main titles, it allows for more movement, more dramaticism, more drama. Okay, thank you. I like the word dramaticism. It makes me sound very dramatic. It just allows for more stuff, more substance to it, and that's why I really like sitting down and enjoying the music in the credits.
Okay, yeah, I think that, yeah, because, like, again, I'm not like someone who despises it. I understand the purpose. It's just that I never really pay attention to it. Like, I'm normally switch off the film after about a minute after the credits start at max, and so I don't really pay much attention to the music that's going on. But I guess what you said, it does make sense because, like, apart from in things like Star Wars where they just repeat the main theme again in the end credits, with things like that when there's a whole new song for the end credits. Like Harry Potter, for example, I think there's a separate song for each of their end credits.
Yeah.
I think it kind of ties in all the music that's gone before into one. So
yeah.
Well, I say it as though I'm an expert. It's like looking back on it and reflecting, I realise that is like the case.
Another one that has really good end credit music is Fantastic Beasts. It reminded me of when you said Harry Potter does, but Fantastic Beasts has amazing end credit music as well, which I highly recommend listening to as well. And I completely forgot about until now to mention in this thing. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
But it's fine. We'll put it in the playlist anyway. It just isn't in the top 5 of what we chose. So, woe is us.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the end of my list. My top 5 for my film picks. Now we should move on to the question, which was submitted by Harry's friend. So thank you very much for that. And the question is, how have your music tastes changed since coming to Manchester? And if so, how have they changed? Honestly, I don't have a very descriptive answer because they haven't really changed. I guess the turning point for my music taste change was when I went to sixth form. I sort of, without getting too deep into my life, I moved school. I sort of completely, not rebranded myself. I became more myself when I moved school, and yeah. So I stopped sort of following what was trendy, what was cool, what was in the charts, and I've moved on to my music taste, which is basically just finding a song. I don't really see who it's by necessarily, but like finding a song, and if I like the sound of that song, then I'll listen to it and it'll be in my playlist. So I have a lot of like random songs by completely different artists that I listen to. I don't have like apart from like Panic at the Disco or something, I don't have like one artist that I will listen to religiously. It's more just random things. I guess since coming to uni though, I have been exposed to more like classical music and jazz and world music as well, just purely because of my degree. But other than that, I really don't think it's changed very much since coming to Manchester.
So you were more like a singles person, so to speak. So maybe less of an album type person. Not to say that's a criticism, but like you find a song or just click on it or something like that. Or am I completely misjudging?
Yeah, no, you're right. I do have a few albums. They tend to be from my like emo phase when I would listen to like, there's a lot of like, obviously Panic at the Disco on there, Fall Out Boy, My Chemical Romance, like all of those kind of bands, some Paramore thrown in there. I have those albums. As I got older and as the tastes have changed, I haven't really bought albums anymore, just because, unless there's one that I really, really do like, and that is very, very rare. But just because I tend to like one song from the album, it doesn't even have to be the song that was released as a single, per se. I can just find one song on the album that I like and just listen to that forever, really.
Okay. Yeah, I actually think I have a bit more of a detailed answer to this question. When I got to Manchester, I didn't know much at all. Like I had Spotify, for example, for about 4 years, and I'd only saved about 400 songs by November 2018. Well, between May 2014 and November 2018, I'd only saved about 450 songs. But when I got to Manchester, like, all of these people were just saying to me, oh, you've heard this piece, or you've heard that piece, or you've heard this song, that song. Even in the genres I absolutely love. Like, one of my really good friends, I share an electronic music taste with him. Like, we're both into electronic music and into Monster Cat. And he'd say all these songs that I had no idea of. And I just thought, oh my God, I've been so narrow-minded for so many years, and I've barely opened myself to, like, you know, different artists. It's been this selection of songs and musicians and nothing more. And that was why, like, I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna really try as hard as I can to remove this kind of mental block in my head and go out there and listen to music by musicians who I claim to like yet only knew about 2 or 3 songs from, and or musicians or groups who I hadn't given a chance up to that point. And that was one of the reasons why I started my album a day thing for my New Year's resolution, because I listened to a lot more in 2019, obviously, because I realised, you know, I need to try and actually educate myself a little bit. But this is what I was like, you know what, I'm going to actually properly educate myself and be like, yeah, I've heard this album, I can form an opinion on this album, or that album, or this album. And I feel as though my music tastes have changed, because I still think they're really varied, as they have been for ages, in terms of genres, but they're now really varied in terms of musicians and groups as well. And so I feel a lot more musically educated than I did before. Obviously, there are so many bands and so many musicians who I'm yet to discover or haven't listened to the entire discographies of, or albums that I'm yet to listen to, which I really want to for whatever reason I haven't done so yet. But I feel as though I actually can say, like, you know what, I know this album, or I know this song, and I feel as though I can hold my own. And it's as a result of coming to Manchester and studying music and people being like, oh, I know this album, and then in my mind thinking, out loud saying, oh yeah, that's great, and in my mind thinking, oh my God, I have no idea what the hell this is. And I think that's kind of like, again, I'm not the musical expert, but just for a bit of context, it's gone from, like, you know, 450 songs saved on Spotify in November 2018 to now, where I have 1,350.
That's quite the change.
Yeah, quite the change. I've pretty much, you know, tripled the number of songs I have in my Spotify catalogue in less than 2 years, which is good on my part, I think, because I finally opened my mind. There you go, there's my essay for this week. Yeah. Sarah's done one, and now I've done one. And of course, I've been exposed to more classical music, as Sarah has, as a result of, you know, going to concerts and just thinking, okay, I'll go and give this a listen and see what I think.
Well, it's like, even in the last year, like with the world music stuff, like I wouldn't have listened to something like Onkyo or like
the
Kalini Tribe music just like by myself, but it was really interesting. I wouldn't say I'd go and listen to it like again per se, but it's interesting to listen to and to get a wider like breadth of stuff that you have listened to.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess we now move on to our final section, as always, with our listens for the week, what we've been listening to this week, and what we think maybe you should as well. I guess we'll start with Harry on this one.
Yeah, so again, sadly it's only been a few days since we actually recorded the last episode, so hasn't really been like much in the way of new stuff. I mean, I basically went and listened to Bad Sons' entire discography, but I mentioned them last week, so I'm not going to mention them again. So the ones I've been listening to, the first one is a song called Pomegranate by Deadmau5 featuring the Neptunes, and it's actually kind of like the Neptunes remix of a Deadmau5 song. I can't remember what it's called. I think it was called Rupert or something like that. But it's electronic funk, and Pharrell is the singer on it, and I think it just works so well. Like, every time the drums start kicking in, I'm just nodding my head. It's impossible not to. Great song. Go and listen to it. My second one, I finally got into the Foo Fighters, and a song that I've been listening to a lot by them is the song Arlandria from the album Wasting Light. It's an interesting juxtaposition of like the hard rock styles which they've done over the last few years, or the last few albums, and then also the kind of more mellow pop stuff, or not pop stuff, but like mellow acoustic stuff that they've done as well. So I thought it was quite a cool mixture of the two, and one of the highlights from that album, I think. And my final one is back to metal again, but it is the song Sugar by System of a Down. And it's, very typical, outlandish, weird, quirky, lurching all over the place System of a Down, but that's their character, that's their style, and it's just an excellent song. And when Darren Malakian just shouts "Sugar" every time, it's fantastic. So that's the stuff some of the stuff. I keep on saying all of the stuff I've been listening to, as I've only listened to 3 songs every week. Obviously, that's not the case. But that is some of the stuff I've been listening to over the week.
Yeah, as Harry said before, it's not been very long since we recorded the last episode, and I tend to have my favourites playlist on a bit of a loop, so I've probably mentioned all those songs, but I've tried to get some new things in. Okay, so the first song that I've been listening to this week is a song called Bon Iver by MXMtoon. I don't know how you say her name. So it's sort of got it's her new song, and it's got like really chilled out pop acoustic sort of vibes, and she has a really nice soothing voice, which is why I keep coming back and listening to her stuff, because her voice is just so relaxing. That's all I really have to say about that, but it's just a nice song to listen to. The second song is the new song by McFly, finally. It's called Happiness, and they've got an album coming out pretty soon, which is kind of exciting. But it's nice. It's like uplifting pop, quite summery. But I feel like it sounds like something I've heard before. I don't know why that is. I obviously haven't heard it before because it's a new release, but it just sounds like something I have heard before. But yeah, it's still worth a listen though, I'd say. It's pretty good. And the final piece, I should probably say, whilst doing the research and finding my favourite films, I came across the Little Women score. I love the film Little Women. It made me cry and laugh like at the same time. It's just such a beautiful film, and Alexandre Desplat. I'm so sorry.
Desplat.
I'm having a real problem today. Thank you very much. Desplat did the music for it, and it has, again, it's sort of period drama-y, but it has these like it has a real quirkiness to it. There's a lot of changing time signatures and a lot of like pizzicato strings that really make it sound kind of quirky, but also fit this period drama sort of theme. So yeah, that's what I've been listening to this week.
And that concludes this week's edition of the podcast. So next week is our tri-weekly special where we delve into a year in music, and it will be my choice. So stay tuned for that, and direct all hate comments and emails towards me, even though you don't have my email address. Haha. But But that will be, obviously, you'll find that what that is in due course when, of course, that episode gets released next week. But stay tuned for that, and thank you very much for listening to this week's version. And until next time,
we'll see you then.